they might need him in that spot if they don't get their guys healthy. But with everybody healthy, Ohtani would make 8 starting pitchers, caliber pitchers on the roster. You don't need 8 starting pitchers. They've been going a lot, especially with Yamamoto, Sasaki, and Ohtani. They've been going with that like 6-man kind of deal because that's what they do in Japan and the KBO. They go on a 6-man rotation schedule to limit innings on guys. And so when they're young and they're trying to come over here, a lot of teams will do that for those guys to try and get them acclimated to Major League Baseball.
It's time for Sportsnaut's MLB podcast. Big League Buzz, news and interviews from around the majors. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back to Sportsnaut's Big League Buzz, our MLB podcast. Do us a favor, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio. If you're watching us on video, also hit subscribe. Don't forget that thumbs up, and also turn on that notifications bell, if you will. We're talking Dodgers baseball. We're talking Shohei Ohtani. Boy, just the best player in baseball. Nothing much to talk about there, right? And to do that, today we're bringing on our guest, and we're excited to do so. That is Mr. Hunter Mulholland. He is a contributor over at Newsweek. Hunter, thanks for joining us here on Big League Buzz.
Absolutely, Scott. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Anytime I can talk about baseball is good. I mean, we're just coming into the All-Star break, obviously. But a few weeks ago, you wrote a piece, to me, is very fascinating, and it really caught my eye. It was titled, "Should the Dodgers Consider Shohei Ohtani as a lights-out closer?" Of course, we have heard Hall of Famer David Ortiz talk about that a little bit as well, as he floated the idea. But when I read your piece, it really just grabbed my attention because of Ohtani's significance for the Dodgers, not only offensively, but coming off that injury and getting back to pitching. Can you elaborate a little bit on your core argument for Ohtani potentially serving as a closer for the Dodgers, especially considering their current depth issues with Roki Sasaki, Blake Snell, Glasnow, and others? They're expected to return, but then you have Yamamoto, Clayton Kershaw. All these guys have been injured. Talk us through, I should say, a little bit of your argument and why this might be something the Dodgers could consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So the basis of my idea was that David Ortiz clip. It was, when I saw it, it was just about a minute long video on Twitter. So I had to do some digging to kind of get some context for what he said. But Snell, Glasnow, Sasaki, and Gonsolin are all on the injured list. They're all expected to return. Snell is gone, and he has started his rehab stint. Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic said that he is wanting to go 3 starts or at least stretch a start to 5 innings before he comes back. So it's kind of one of those things where if Snell comes back, he slots in with Yamamoto. He slots in with Clayton Kershaw. I think Dustin May is already the guy that in the healthy side that right now, if you go into October, he's probably the odd man out because of Ohtani coming back, because you don't necessarily see 5 starting pitchers in the playoffs. You see maybe 4. And Glasnow's already returned. He threw 5 innings on, I believe it was Wednesday night, 2 hits, no earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks against the Brewers. He's been really, really good when he's healthy. And that's the thing about Glasnow, is he's always had the injury concerns. But when you look at it, Sasaki, Snell, Glasnow, Gonsolin, there's 4 there, along with the healthy Yamamoto, a healthy Clayton Kershaw, and a healthy Dustin May. That's 7 starters. When you get to the playoffs, let's say the Dodgers win and get the bye. They're going to start the playoffs with a 5-game series. You're likely going to see 3, maybe 4 starting pitchers, because if that game 4 is a do or die, they might go back to their ace on short rest. If it's not, then they might go to him in game 5 if they need it.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff too, because I think some of the people always consider, look, when you have a starter, I mean, and you look at Ohtani, and yes, he hasn't gone more than 3 innings, although he's done well in those 3 innings. You don't, very rarely do you consider taking a guy who could be a number 1, number 2 starter normally before injury and think about moving him to the bullpen. But the Dodgers, as you mentioned, all the guys that they have on the disabled list, including in that bullpen, does that make it more interesting because it is a need? Or do you think that this situation, the Dodgers are going to count too much on him as a starting pitcher to even consider it?
I think they could count on him as a starting pitcher, especially if there's setbacks in Snell, setbacks in Sasaki. If there's setbacks between some of those starting pitchers that are slotted to get back either late August, or I believe Gonsolin was slotted for like September. He's not even throwing yet, I don't believe. Right. So they might need him in that spot if they don't get their guys healthy. But with everybody healthy, Ohtani would make 8 starting pitchers, caliber pitchers on the roster. You don't need 8 starting pitchers. They've been going a lot, especially with Yamamoto, Sasaki, and Ohtani. They've been going with that like 6-man kind of deal because that's what they do in Japan and the KBO. They go on a 6-man rotation schedule to limit innings on guys. And so when they're young and they're trying to come over here, a lot of teams will do that for those guys to try and get them acclimated to Major League Baseball. With the bullpen, Phillips is done for the season. Evan Phillips is done for the season with Tommy John. Brusdar Graterol is expected to return in September with the plan to start rehab stints in August. And Blake Trinan is close to being returned he's started his rehab stint and he threw 17 pitches in his second outing. So they're starting to get some arms back in the bullpen. If there's any setbacks with the starters, I don't think that there's any consideration for Ohtani to go to the bullpen.
Yeah. But just a fascinating point. I know people brought up the rules too, that if you're a player, because Ohtani being a designated hitter and then going out to pitch later in the game, very interesting rules there as well. So I invite people to check into it. But Ohtani's outing just this past Saturday, I mean, he reportedly hit 99.9 miles per hour on his fastball. He struck out the side in his first inning. How big of a tone setter was that for him and for the Dodgers as far as his pitching goes before we hit the All-Star break here?
The biggest thing for me in Ohtani's return, especially that 3-inning outing, was his efficiency. Everybody in baseball, around baseball, that knows baseball, understands that Shohei Ohtani is going to light up the radar gun. I'm sorry, hold on. Stop it. My dog and my cat are fighting.
No worries.
So anyways, Ohtani can light up the radar gun, and everybody knows that. The efficiency, he threw like 32 pitches, 36 pitches over the course of that 3-inning outing. That's 12 pitches an inning on the high side. If you can do that for Ohtani, he's going to be able to build back up and he's going to be able to go long in games as a starting pitcher. Or if you have the depth at starter, which the Dodgers do, assuming everybody comes back in October, in the playoffs, you could realistically see Shohei Ohtani is going to go out there in game 1. And he's going to close the game. He's going to go out there in game 2 and close the game as long as he stays efficient, because that's the biggest key with him is staying efficient. Now, with him, it was very good and bad, because obviously him being electric on the mound to start the game and setting the tone early and putting the other team down, going out there 1, 2, 3 in the first, very easily starts the conversation of, well, maybe you don't need to move him. But it kind of makes me think of a John Smoltz when he came back from Tommy John and he came back as a closer for the Braves. That's where my thought goes. Maybe it's not a long-term thing. Maybe it's just this year, especially because there's question marks about Clayton Kershaw returning, as there always has been for the last, feels like 3 years. There's been a question on whether or not Clayton Kershaw is going to continue to pitch. But that's kind of where it's set up, is maybe it's not a long-term thing. Maybe it's just a this year thing and he goes out there and he closes. But it'd be pretty electric to see, but his efficiency really stood out to me.
Yeah, no, definitely. So listen, the Dodgers themselves, as we start to look at the second half of the season, they ended that 7-game losing streak over this past weekend. And it was a severe one. If you look at the fact they were outscored 52-17 from July 4th until the 11th, and their NL lead shrank from 9 games down to now 4.5. What do you think contributed most to that slump? And how vital was Saturday's win to kind of get over that hump and maybe get some momentum going into the All-Star break?
I'd say the biggest thing is stopping the skid before you go into this 4 days off and you sit there and you think about, oh, we're on a 8-game losing streak. We're on a 9-game losing streak, whatever it is. And you go into a 4-day break and you sit there and you have to toil on it for the amount of time up until first pitch of the game on Friday or Thursday when they come back. But it's always really good to end those skids against your biggest rival in the Giants. They do it against the Giants, and then they also go out there and set up themselves to be like, hey, we may have struggled over the last week and a half, but we're still the top dog. We're still going to beat you when it matters. And I think that they kind of set the tone with the Giants there by stopping that skid before the All-Star break, kind of reset their minds over the next 4 days, reset their bodies, get some guys that have been banged up healed a little bit, and come back and start the second half on a strong foot.
No doubt about it. But we look at the NL West, Hunter. The San Diego Padres are currently in second, tied with the Giants there, and holding that third wild card spot just by a hair. Considering the current state of the Dodgers, some of those question marks you brought up with a year they've been riddled with injuries, do you still think they hold a sizable advantage over the rivals like the Giants and the Padres in maintaining their lead? Or could this division get a lot closer in the second half?
I think it can get closer. I still think I'm going to lean to the Dodgers winning this division by 4 games at the end of the year, especially with them getting guys back in August and September. The amount of times I grew up in St. Louis, the amount of times I watched the St. Louis Cardinals come back out of nowhere in September, including 2011, the amount of times I've seen that happen is amazing. So September is a really big month, even though a lot of teams, it can be a throwaway month, especially if they're locked into a playoff spot. So I would still give it to the Dodgers. But if one of them had an edge, the Devers trade did move my needle for about a week. And then the Giants hit a really rough second half of June, and it flipped it back to the Padres. I began the year thinking that if the Dodgers were going to get caught, it was going to be San Diego. And now I've come back to thinking it's going to be the Padres that are going to catch them again, just because of that tough stretch in June. But it could flip. Baseball is a weird game, and as tight as that division is, it can absolutely flip. The Devers trade definitely changed my mind of maybe the Giants are in this thing for real. And then that second half of June just did not hold up to what I was thinking it was going to be.
No, I've been sort of waiting for the Giants to stumble, and they did. Now, to your point, though, I think they're better than I thought they were, certainly. I look at the Padres, though, going into the All-Star break, they win 2 of 3 at home against the Phillies. Not a bad team to beat. I don't care if it is at home. And the Padres had to rest most of their bullpen on the back end of that series because of use going into the break. So I look at the Padres pitching and bullpen, and I think they have an edge there, with San Francisco maybe having some advantages, like you said, with the Devers trade and whatnot. When you look at that NL West, it's so hard for one division to put 3 teams in the playoffs. But is it a possibility the NL West could send the Dodgers as the division crown champions there, and then the Padres and the Giants? How do you look at the overall National League and how the West fits into that?
In the National League, I think that the NL East is going to get 2 teams. The Phillies and Mets are in. I know the Mets have struggled recently, but I still think they're going to be fine. They're going to get in. I don't know which team is going to win that division, because saw last year the National League West got tight towards the end with the Braves and the Mets, even though that was for the wild card spot. But it did get tight in that division. I still think that right now, I like the chances of each division getting 2. The Brewers are playing really good baseball. The Cardinals aren't that far out, but then you also do have the Padres and Giants who are right there with them as well. If the Cardinals go into the trade deadline and don't do anything and stand pat like they have in years past, I don't think they get in. If the Brewers go into the trade deadline and move Freddie Peralta like there's rumblings about, I think that they fall out of the playoff mix, and that's when you see the Padres and Giants both get in. But right now, I think I'd give the edge to the Padres. I'm waiting for the Giants to not necessarily stumble as much as they did in June, but I'm waiting for the Padres really to break out one more time and go on a run that kind of solidifies them in the wild card race.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think too. I think you got to watch the Reds. The Reds have been inconsistent, but now again they have an ownership issue because just like you talked about the Cardinals not maybe necessarily making moves, the Reds need to make a move or two, and ownership has always been reluctant to do that. So I look at them and I watch them and think maybe they could make a move there in that Central, but I'm doubtful just because of the ownership. I've seen the ownership do that in years past, and it's become sort of a repetitive pattern for them. So we'll see how it goes down. But Hunter, listen, man, I want to thank you for joining us. We'll have you on later in the season. Make sure you read Hunter's story. We got it linked down below, as well as a link to all of his work where you can find his great stuff up on Newsweek and other places too. He does work elsewhere. Hunter, thanks for joining us here on Big League Buzz.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Glad to be here.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Big League Buzz, Major League Baseball podcast from Sportsnaut. Make sure you follow us wherever you are. That means subscribe to the podcast on the audio side. Don't forget to rate and review. Also, if you're watching us on video, hit that thumbs up and subscribe as well. Until next time, keep swinging for the fences, everybody.